Richard Lane didn't think he'd end up alone. At 54, life had given him comfort, but not companionship. His marriage had ended quietly, a slow erosion after 22 years. His two daughters, now adults, had long since moved out, too wrapped up in their own lives to call more than once or twice a month. The house in Columbus, Ohio, had grown silent. He had money. He had time. But what he didn't have was someone to share a morning coffee with, or to laugh with while folding laundry. The kind of presence that made a house feel alive. Late one night, as the glow of the TV flickered across his living room walls, Richard found himself watching a video titled, "Why Western Men Find Real Love in the Philippines." It showed happy couples, older men with younger women, smiling on beaches, walking through markets, dancing at weddings. It stirred something in him, not just desire, hope. He clicked the link in the video description and joined the dating site. That's when he met her. Camille, 25 years old, from Davao City, a single mother of two boys, living with her parents in a small, concrete home with a leaky roof and a warm heart. Her first message wasn't flirty, it was kind. "Hello, Richard. I'm Camille. I read your profile, and you seem like a good, honest man. I don't care about age, I care about loyalty and heart." That one line stuck with him. They talked every day. At first, just messages, then video calls. She'd show him her life, her boys playing in the background, her mother cooking dinner, the narrow streets of her neighborhood. Richard fell for her humility, her sweetness, her warmth. He visited her after 3 months. When he stepped out of the airport in Davao, Camille was waiting with a bouquet of sunflowers and a bashful smile. She looked even more radiant in person. The hug they shared lingered longer than he expected. She smelled like coconut and fresh rain. Her family welcomed him with warmth, laughter, and home-cooked meals. Camille introduced him as Kuya Richard at first, but by the end of the week it was just love. He returned home floating. 6 months later, he visited again. This time, he stayed 2 weeks. They traveled to Samal Island, swam in turquoise waters, danced barefoot on the beach. He gave her mother money for medicine, bought groceries, paid the boys' tuition for the school year. It all felt right. He wasn't being used. He was being included, needed, valued. By the third visit, Richard was calling Davao his second home. He knew the names of the tricycle drivers on her street, tipped the local fruit vendor generously, and kissed Camille goodnight every single evening. He asked her to marry him during a quiet moment in a beachside hut as her boys played nearby. She wept and said yes. When he returned to Ohio, he began the K-1 visa process immediately. He paid every fee, hired a reputable immigration lawyer, and kept the money flowing to Camille so her family could stay afloat while they waited. A year passed. Her visa was approved. He cried when he bought her plane ticket, sent extra for luggage, told her not to worry about anything. He'd take care of it all, even promised to send money back to her family while she adjusted to life in America. When she arrived at John Glenn International Airport, Richard held a sign that read, "Welcome home, Camille," with both hands trembling. She ran to him and hugged him so tight he could hardly breathe. She whispered, "I'm home now, love." He didn't know that in less than a week she would vanish, without warning, without explanation, into the arms of another man. The first few days felt like magic. Richard couldn't stop smiling. Camille walked barefoot through his kitchen in his oversized t-shirt, giggling as she explored every room like a child in a new world. She took photos of everything, his coffee maker, the view from the window, even the inside of his closet. He found it charming, endearing, proof that she was grateful. They went shopping together, her hand always looped through his arm. He bought her a new phone, a purse, winter clothes. Whatever she wanted, he offered without hesitation. After all, she had left her family, her children, her entire world for him. The least he could do was make her feel at home. But by the 4th day, the change began. Camille grew quieter, distant. She stopped reaching for his hand, stopped calling him love. She scrolled through her phone constantly, smiling at private messages, then locking the screen when he looked over. Richard noticed, but said nothing. That night, She claimed a headache and went to bed early, without him. The next morning she was already dressed when he woke up. "I'm going to take a walk," she said casually, brushing past him. "Just want to see the neighborhood." He watched her disappear down the sidewalk, phone in hand. She was gone for 3 hours. When she returned, her eyes were wild and full of energy, not for him, but for something else. Someone else. That night, when she thought he was asleep, she went into the guest room and had a whispered conversation in Bisaya. He couldn't understand the words, but he heard the tone, soft, intimate, familiar. His chest tightened. The next day, she was gone. He came home from the grocery store to find her drawers empty, her phone off, her belongings vanished. On the kitchen counter sat the welcome sign he had made, folded once, neatly, like a goodbye. She didn't leave a note. No explanation. Just silence. Richard sat at the kitchen table until dark, heart hollowed out, hands trembling. He tried her number again and again. Nothing. The next morning, a friend from the immigration law office called him. "Richard, I don't know how to tell you this, but we received a notice. Camille has already filed to update her address. She's living in Phoenix now. She listed a man named Dante Rivera as her U.S. contact. Fiance." "Fiance?" Richard's ears rang. "I thought I was the fiancé," he whispered. He stared at the floor as the pieces began to fall into place. The long conversations in Bisaya, the sudden shift in mood, the excited energy in her eyes when she returned from that walk. She hadn't come to build a life with him. She had come to escape to the arms of someone younger, someone already here. Everything he had done, the visits, the money, the school fees, the visa, the airfare, the groceries, the gifts, the love, it all meant nothing. He had been used, played, thrown away, and something deep inside him broke. Richard didn't eat for 2 days. He sat in the living room with the lights off, staring at the couch where she once curled up beside him, hearing the echo of her laughter like a ghost slipping through the walls. He scrolled through their old messages on his phone, each "I love you," each "I miss you," each photo of her blowing kisses through the screen back when she was still in the Philippines. His fingers trembled. He wanted to delete them all, but he couldn't. Not yet. He needed to understand why. He checked her new address again, Phoenix, Arizona, a townhouse in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The man she was living with, Dante Rivera, was 27, ex-military, worked private security, clean background, confident smile. Their public photos surfaced quickly. Camille on his lap at a backyard barbecue, Camille holding a small dog and laughing. Camille in a white sundress, the same one Richard had bought her in Davao, standing in front of Dante's truck. They looked happy, comfortable, as if she'd never even been in Ohio. His stomach turned, his hands clenched. She'd told him, "You're the first man to make me feel safe." Lies. He remembered wiring money for her son's asthma medication. Lies. He remembered her crying on the beach in Samal, whispering, "I'll never break your heart." All lies. Still, some part of him tried to rationalize it. Maybe she was scared. Maybe Dante pressured her. Maybe this was all some horrible misunderstanding. But then he saw it. A hotel mirror selfie Camille had posted to her private story. Her lips pressed to Dante's cheek, time-stamped 2 weeks before her flight to Ohio. She was already his. That's when something broke. Richard stood in the kitchen, frozen, staring into space for nearly an hour before finally moving. He booked a one-way ticket to Phoenix that evening. He didn't bring anything suspicious, just a duffel bag, a jacket, and the same savings account he'd been using to build a life with her. He arrived 2 days later, checked into a cheap motel near Interstate 10, and asked the front desk for directions to a nearby sporting goods store. "Looking for anything specific?" the clerk asked. Richard paused. "Something small, discreet, easy to carry." Arizona had no waiting period. Within the hour, he walked out of the store with a legally purchased handgun, a box of ammunition, and a black nylon holster. That night, he sat on the edge of the motel bed, staring at the weapon resting on the nightstand beside him. not out of anger, but clarity. Camille hadn't just stolen his heart, she had destroyed it. She had taken his kindness, his generosity, his belief in love, and spat on it. He had paid for her life, and now he was going to take it back. Phoenix in May was a dry kind of cruel. The heat wasn't just hot, it was personal. It clung to your skin, pressed into your lungs, and whispered, "You don't belong here." But Richard didn't notice. His world had narrowed down to a single target. He spent 3 days learning the neighborhood, an upper-middle-class suburb just outside Glendale. Cookie-cutter homes, palm trees, and SUV moms in yoga pants sipping iced coffees. It felt like a fake world. Too clean, too calm, and in the middle of it all, them. Camille and Dante lived in a beige 2-story townhouse on a corner lot. Their front yard was covered in decorative gravel and 2 stubby cacti. The first time Richard saw her, she was coming out of the house in gym shorts and a tank top, laughing into her phone. She looked happy, lighter, as if she'd never once cried on his shoulder, as if his house, his money, his love had never even happened. She climbed into Dante's black Dodge Ram and leaned over to kiss him, slow, deep, intimate. Richard flinched. That same mouth had whispered promises to him just weeks ago. "I want to grow old with you." Every day, Richard parked down the street in his rented Hyundai and watched their routine. Mornings, Dante left around 8:30, likely heading to a security job downtown. Camille lingered at home, sometimes running errands, sometimes out for brunch with friends. Richard followed discreetly, never getting too close, always observing. Evenings, Dante returned around 6. Camille would greet him at the door, barefoot, smiling. They often cooked together. Sometimes they ordered takeout. On the second night, they made love with the windows open. Richard didn't look away. On the third night, he followed them to a small Mexican restaurant on Camelback Road. They shared margaritas, laughed, touched constantly. Richard sat at the bar, drinking a warm beer he didn't taste, watching her cradle Dante's face in her hands like she'd done to him once, on a beach in Davao just after she said yes. That memory made his eye twitch. That night, back in his motel room, Richard took out the pistol again, laid it on the bed beside a small spiral notebook. Inside the notebook were notes. Dante leaves at 8:30 a.m. Camille usually alone until noon. No kids, no roommates. Fridays, grocery run, usually 10-11 a.m. Back door faces alley, low visibility. He had a plan forming. He would wait for the perfect window. When Dante was gone and Camille was alone, he wouldn't yell, wouldn't make a scene. He'd look her in the eye and ask why. And then he'd decide what justice looked like. Because Richard wasn't a killer. Not yet. But every lie she told had been a cut. Every dollar he sent, a piece of his soul. Every moment she spent in another man's arms was gasoline on the fire. And now the flames were licking at the edge of his sanity. Richard adjusted to Phoenix like a shadow, always present, never seen. Each day, he learned more about Camille's new life. She had reinvented herself. She wore her hair differently now, loose waves instead of a ponytail. She carried herself with ease, no longer the modest Filipina who once bowed her head before taking his hand. She was bolder, louder, Americanized. She had become someone else. One evening, parked 3 houses down with the windows cracked and sweat beading on his brow, Richard stared at their glowing windows and felt an itch he couldn't scratch. How long had she planned this? Had anything been real? He needed answers. That night, back at the motel, Richard logged into WhatsApp using the same number he used when they first started talking. He scrolled until he found the last conversation with her mother, Alma, a sweet, polite woman who always called him Sir Richard and thanked him endlessly for the support he gave her daughter and grandchildren. He remembered paying for Alma's medical bills last year, for groceries, for a roof repair after a typhoon. "God bless you, sir," she had said. "You are a gift to our family." He took a breath and typed, "Richard, hello Po, Mama Alma. I hope you are doing well. I've been trying to reach Camille. Is she okay? The message showed as delivered. He waited. 10 minutes later, the typing bubble appeared. Alma. Hello, Sir Richard. Sorry for late reply. Camille is okay, Poe. She is just settling in. So many adjustments. Please don't worry. She told us she is busy with immigration things and making a future for both of you. She said you are good to her. Richard stared at the screen. Settling in? Making a future with him? His jaw tightened. She was living with another man, and her mother was still helping sell the lie. He replied slowly. Richard. Oh, I thought she was staying somewhere else. I haven't seen her in a few days. Alma. No. She said she is with you, Poe. We are so happy she is there now. The boys miss her, but she said it's for a better life. Thank you again for helping her get to America, sir. He ended the chat without another word. Richard sat motionless for a long time, then opened his banking app. He scrolled through a long list of transfers. $600, school fees, $1,200, roof repairs, $300, Camille's passport renewal, $700, new phone for Camille, $900, emergency hospital funds for her cousin, $2,000, visa expenses, $2,500, airfare plus luggage, final preparations. He stopped counting. It wasn't just money. It was his heart in every dollar. She didn't just run off. She orchestrated this. And now, even her mother, the same woman who had prayed with him on the phone, who cried when he proposed to Camille, was lying through her teeth. He stood up, the motel room dark except for the glow of his phone. Camille had traded him in, erased him, and now she was letting the people he helped smile in his face while they twisted the knife deeper. His hand hovered over the pistol. Not yet, but soon. By now, Richard knew everything. He knew that Dante's shift ended at 6:15 p.m. on the dot, and that Camille always came out 5 minutes before, waiting barefoot on the porch with a playful smile and her arms wide open. He knew that on Wednesdays, Camille took Dante's car to a strip mall where she got her nails done at a place called Lux Tips while sipping on milk tea. On Fridays, she went to a Filipino market on Thomas Road, where she sometimes FaceTimed her mother with a fake background behind her, so her mother would think she was still in Columbus. Richard saw it all. He followed from a distance, sometimes parked only a few feet away in crowded lots, watching her laugh, flirt, live freely. She had no clue. The gun sat in the glove box now, always loaded, always close. He didn't rush. He had become calm, too calm. He stopped flinching when he saw Dante touch her. He stopped shaking when he saw Camille wear the jewelry he'd once mailed her. This wasn't rage anymore. This was a decision waiting to be carried out. Still, he needed the final piece, the truth. On a warm Thursday morning, he followed Camille again, this time on foot, blending into the bustle of the outdoor Filipino market. She was alone, sunglasses on, chatting on her phone in Bisaya. He couldn't understand every word, but he caught phrases. Yes, he's still calling Mama. No, she doesn't suspect anything. He looked so sad at the airport. I felt bad, but you know it had to be done. Then she laughed. It was soft, genuine, almost cruel. And in that moment, Richard knew there was never a chance. It wasn't desperation that led her to him. It was calculation. She needed a way out of the Philippines. She picked him, a soft man with money and a big heart, and she used every ounce of it to buy a life with someone else. Richard turned away before she could see him and walked 2 blocks back to the car, heart steady, breath smooth. That night, he sat in the motel and wrote a letter. Handwritten, precise. To whom it may concern, my name is Richard Lane. I am of sound mind. What I did because justice failed me. I gave everything I had, emotionally, financially, spiritually, to a woman who promised me love. Camille Reyes. She manipulated me, used me, and left me as if I was garbage. The man she is with now, Dante Rivera, knew. He had to have known. She planned it, lied to her family, lied to me. Let this not be misunderstood. I was not crazy. I was broken, and I broke back. R. Lane. He folded the letter and tucked it into the drawer beside the bed, just beneath his wallet and ID. Then, with calm precision, he set his alarm for 7 a.m. Tomorrow was Friday. Dante would be at work, Camille would be alone, and Richard would no longer be waiting. The morning sun was already searing the desert horizon when Richard pulled onto the street where Camille lived. The world looked normal. Water sprinklers hissing, trash bins at the curb, a dog barking somewhere nearby. But inside the rented Hyundai, everything was still, quiet, heavy. Richard sat there for 10 minutes, watching the beige townhouse like a soldier observing enemy lines. At 8:35 a.m., Dante's truck backed out of the driveway and disappeared down the street. Richard waited 5 more minutes, his fingers wrapped loosely around the wheel before stepping out. He wore a button-down shirt, tucked in, khakis, clean shoes. He looked like a man on his way to church. The pistol was tucked beneath his waistband, loaded, hidden. The sidewalk felt longer than usual. His breath was steady, but his mind had splintered into two, one part calm and focused, the other screaming at him to turn around. But it was too late for that. This was the end of the road. He knocked once, then again. He heard footsteps, light, familiar. When the door opened, Camille's face twisted in confusion, then horror. "Richard?" She tried to close the door, but he wedged his foot between it. "Please," he said softly. "We need to talk." "Why are you here?" she hissed. "You're not supposed to be here. This isn't okay." "I know." She went pale. Her hands trembled, but she stepped back. Richard walked into the house he'd never seen from the inside, the place he had unknowingly paid for. It smelled of citrus and perfume. A laptop was open on the dining table. A framed photo of her and Dante smiled from the wall. She crossed her arms. "You need to leave." "I just want the truth." She hesitated. "You lied to me," he said. "Every day. You planned this. You used me, my money, my heart, everything." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. "Tell me," he said, voice calm, "was any of it real?" She looked away, and that was enough. "No," she whispered. "I did what I had to do." Richard nodded. That was it. Not regret, not even guilt, just strategy. He reached for the letter in his back pocket, walked to the kitchen counter, and placed it there. Camille watched him like he was a ticking bomb. "I loved you," he said, "and you erased me." Then, slowly, Richard lifted his shirt and pulled the pistol from his waistband. "No, no, Richard, please." She backed away, hands raised. "I'm not a monster," he said, "but you made me into one." The first shot rang out like thunder. It hit her in the chest, throwing her back against the wall. She gasped once, then collapsed. Blood spread fast across the tile. Richard stood over her, breathing hard. For a moment, everything was still, until the door opened. Dante. He froze, eyes wide. "What the hell? Huh?" Richard turned, raised the pistol, and fired twice. Dante dropped instantly. Silence returned. Richard looked around the room. His money, his heart, his dreams scattered in broken glass and blood. It wasn't justice, not really, but it was done. He walked to the front porch, sat down on the steps, placed the pistol gently beside him, and waited. When the police arrived 15 minutes later, guns drawn, Richard didn't move. He just whispered, "She told me she loved me." The murders of Camille Reyes and Dante Rivera stunned the Phoenix community. News outlets flooded with headlines. Retired Ohio man kills Filipina fiance and her lover in suburban double homicide. From romance to revenge, Visa love triangle ends in bloodshed. Photos of Richard were plastered across screens, his mugshot calm, his silver hair neat, his eyes hollow. To the public, he was a predator, a delusional old man who snapped when he couldn't have what he wanted. Few asked what had led him there. Fewer cared. In the courtroom, prosecutors called it cold-blooded, premeditated, a betrayal of every value the justice system stood for. They read the letter aloud, the one he had left behind, using it as a confession. But Richard's defense painted a different story. They showed wire transfers, emails, plane tickets, visa documents. They detailed months of financial support, 3 separate trips overseas, legal filings, evidence of deceit. They argued he was manipulated, emotionally abused, discarded after being drained of his wealth and dignity. It didn't matter. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on 2 counts of first-degree murder, life in prison without the possibility of parole. He didn't argue, didn't cry, just nodded. When asked if he had anything to say at sentencing, Richard stood, hands shackled, and looked out over the silent courtroom. "I wasn't a perfect man, but I loved her with everything I had. I gave my future to her, and she gave it to someone else before she even stepped off the plane. I didn't kill for jealousy. I killed for the truth, and the truth ruined me." He sat down. That was all. In the Philippines, Camille's death sparked debate online. Some saw her as a tragic figure, others as a con artist who played with fire. Her mother, Alma, held a small funeral in Davao with donations from the community. Her sons were taken in by her cousin. When asked by a local news crew if she had known about Camille's relationship with Dante, Alma said, "She was doing what she thought was best for her future. I didn't ask questions. Maybe I should have." Richard now spends his days in a medium-security prison in southern Arizona. He is quiet, polite, keeps to himself. Other inmates call him Ghost Grandpa, an old man who rarely speaks, just stares through the window at the desert like he's waiting for something that will never return. Once a month, he receives a letter from his oldest daughter. She never visits, but her letters always end the same way. "I wish you had come to me instead. I would have reminded you who you were before she made you forget." He keeps those letters in a small box beneath his cot. They're the only pieces of love he has left. The